Ginkgo biloba. I bet you've seen that name before, right? Maybe on bottles in the supplement aisle, or perhaps you've even walked past one of its really unique, fan-shaped leaves on a city street. This plant has a legendary reputation. It's one of the most popular herbal supplements in the entire world, with sales reaching well over $1 billion. So what is this stuff?
Well, this isn't just any old plant. It's basically a biological time traveler. I mean, its ancestors were around before the dinosaurs. So the big question we're digging into today is whether this ancient survivor's most famous modern claim, that it can boost your brain power, is actually backed by science, or if it's just a myth that's managed to survive as long as the tree itself.
Okay, so before we get into the lab coats and the test tubes, we really need to wrap our heads around the sheer scale of ginkgo's history. Its reputation isn't just modern marketing hype. No. It's built on a story of survival that is honestly almost unbelievable.
Just look at this leaf. That design, it's been around longer than the Atlantic Ocean. I'm not kidding. Charles Darwin himself had a name for plants like this, living fossils. It's literally the last one left from its entire ancient plant family, a true evolutionary orphan.
This timeline? Wow. It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? Ginkgo's ancestors survived the greatest mass extinction in Earth's history. Check. It survived the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. Check. And then, get this, in 1945, less than a mile from the absolute epicenter of the atomic bomb in Hiroshima, 6 ginkgo trees were just obliterated, charred, totally stripped bare. But the very next spring, they started budding again. I mean, come on, this thing is the ultimate survivor.
So you gotta ask, how? How does one species manage to survive, well, basically everything the planet can throw at it? The secret, it turns out, is inside the leaf. It's all about its unique chemical arsenal.
All right, so scientists have found a whole bunch of active compounds in ginkgo, but they really boil down to 2 main groups. First up, you've got flavonoids. You've probably heard of these. They're powerful antioxidants that a lot of plants have, and they basically help protect our cells from damage. And then you have something called terpenoids. Now these are pretty much unique to ginkgo. The thinking is that they help improve blood flow, by helping blood vessels relax and making our blood platelets a little less sticky.
Yeah, this really lays it all out perfectly. You start with the raw stuff, the leaves and the seeds. And inside them, you get all these complex chemicals. For the plant, these chemicals are like its superpowers. They help it fight off drought, bacteria, UV rays, you name it. And what have we humans done? Well, we've figured out how to harness those powers for ourselves, creating everything from medicines and health supplements to cosmetics, even pesticides.
And all of that brings us to the big one, the billion-dollar question, the claim that really put ginkgo on the map. Can it actually help your brain? And folks, this is where things get complicated. The scientific community is completely split on this.
So on one side of the ring, you have these big overview studies, like one from 2016 that looked at a bunch of different trials and said, yep, there's something here. It found that for people who already had mild cognitive impairment or dementia, ginkgo extracts seemed to help. But then, in the other corner, you have these massive, long-term studies like the GEM study. I mean, this thing followed over 3,000 older adults for 6 years. And the result? Absolutely no difference between the people taking ginkgo and the people taking a sugar pill when it came to preventing dementia. Nothing. And that's exactly why big organizations like the NIH in the US say, look, there's just no conclusive proof.
But here's a little twist. When you look closer at the studies that did see a benefit, a specific number keeps popping up, 240 milligrams a day. That review we just talked about, it pointed out that the positive effects really only showed up at this specific higher dose. So that kind of suggests that if it works, the dose might be absolutely critical.
Okay, but that's for people who already have issues. What about for the rest of us? Healthy people who just want to keep our brains sharp. Well, this quote from that same positive review really says it all. The question is still open. For prevention, the science just isn't there yet. It's a big question mark.
So the brain stuff gets all the attention, right? But the claims about ginkgo don't end there. Not by a long shot. Remember how we talked about it possibly improving blood flow? Well, that idea has led researchers to look at it for a whole host of other things.
Yeah, people have looked into whether it can help get more blood to different organs, and that might explain why some smaller studies have hinted that it could help with things like anxiety or that dizzy feeling you get with vertigo, maybe even helping people recover from a stroke. It also seems to be what they call a vasorelaxant, which is just a fancy way of saying it helps your blood vessels chill out, which is always a good thing for your circulation.
But, and you probably saw this coming, it's the same story as the brain health debate. When you look at the really big, really rigorous trials, the evidence for any major heart benefits just kind of fizzles out. The big studies have pretty much concluded it doesn't lower your blood pressure or prevent heart disease in older adults.
Okay, so the evidence for benefits is, let's be honest, pretty murky. But what about the risks? We all have this idea that if something is natural, it must be safe. Well, when it comes to ginkgo, that is a really, really dangerous assumption to make. And the risks are no joke. The International Agency for Research on Cancer has classified it as a possible human carcinogen. The raw leaves and seeds, they're straight up toxic. But probably the biggest, most immediate risk for a lot of people is how it affects bleeding. It can act as a blood thinner, so if you take it with something common like aspirin or warfarin, you could be setting yourself up for serious trouble. Seriously, this is not a supplement you just decide to try. You absolutely have to talk to your doctor first. And this is really interesting. The way different countries handle ginkgo tells you a lot. Over in Germany, it's a prescription medicine. It's tightly controlled with strict limits on those toxic compounds we mentioned. But here in the United States, it's just a dietary supplement. That means the FDA doesn't regulate it for safety or purity, so the amount of the good stuff and the bad stuff can be all over the place from one brand or even one bottle to the next.
So where does that leave us? It's this incredible paradox, isn't it? On one hand, you have this plant that is an absolute, undisputed champion of survival. It's got this unique chemistry that scientists are still fascinated by. And yet, its modern reputation as a brain-boosting wonder drug seems to fall apart when you put it under the microscope of a big clinical trial. So this living fossil forces us to ask a very modern question. In the crowded world of health supplements, how do we ever tell the difference between real ancient wisdom and just plain old wishful thinking?